Well, hello everybody and happy Sunday. I hope you have all had a lovely week. Here in Calgary, things are finally starting to feel like spring, which is so very welcome. I finally got my balcony set up, sort of untarped all the furniture and got it all set up again. But my cushions, discovered that some squirrels had chewed holes in some of the cushions. Darn squirrels. Um, kind of a bummer on that front, but hey, I know better for next year. But yeah, it's just really nice to be able to be outside. But thank you so much for tuning in. The live chat is there for you to sort of throw some questions in as we go. I'd love to sort of hear where in the world you guys are. That's always so cool to sort of hear that you guys are, everywhere around the globe. But yeah, so today we are going to talk about skincare for dry hands, because I think a lot of us are washing our hands. I hope a lot of us are washing our hands a lot more than we usually do, and that can be really hard on the hands. I know when I was a kid, I had really dry hands. Like my hands would crack and they would bleed, and it was really uncomfortable. And I can remember my mom putting hand cream on my hands before I would go to sleep at night, and it would burn and sting so much that I would cry, and it was just awful. And I think I needed to be about 12 or 13 years old before I sort of realized I had, the ability to sort of start solving this problem myself and carrying hand cream around with me so that I didn't, have incredibly painful dry hands all the time. So I feel your pain if you've got dry hands. And I'm hoping we can kind of chat about different ways to tackle that and ways to improve your hand health. So I see we have people from Saskatoon. Hi, Nancy. I have driven through your fair town, and I love the namesake berries. If you guys have never had a Saskatoon berry, you are missing out on a Canadian delicacy. Holland, Quebec, New Zealand. Hi, Russell in New Zealand. I really hope I manage to make it on that trip to New Zealand. I have booked. And wanted to know, am I doing a oil-based hand cream? We're not actually making anything today, but I'm going to be kind of talking through different actives to look out for, ingredients to look out for, and there's some formulations I've already shared linked below. And then I'll probably add on to the description box when we're done and I kind of have a better idea of what we've talked about. Brooklyn, Ontario, India, wow, Nigeria, oh my gosh, South America, California, Boston, Minnesota, Los Angeles, South Carolina. Oh, I was in South Carolina like a year ago. Oh, it's Christopher, of course. He composed the Humblebee and Me theme tune, the music that you hear in my videos. And so, yeah, we met last year at the Asheville Mother Earth News Fair. Richmond, BC, Florida, California, wow, El Salvador, New York. All right. Okay, so hand wash. So I want to start by talking a bit about how the skin works so we can kind of better understand how to care for it. That's a pretty good place to start. If you got a new pet, you would research what it needs to eat. So we're going to kind of look talk a bit about the skin here. I think there's a lot of, it's really easy to think about the skin as if it's sort of an extension of like our internal organs, and that's sort of like what's good for your stomach is good for your skin, and that's sometimes true but sometimes not, so I thought we'd kind of dive into that a little bit. So the skin, of course, is our largest organ, and it's like a giant waterproof duffel bag for us. So it protects us from UV exposure, keeps us from like losing our internal organs and like catching our veins on doorknobs as we walk past things, and it protects us, so it keeps our inner bits protects us from drying out, from getting a sunburn on our lungs, from accidentally dropping a kidney as we're at the store. It protects us from bacteria, viruses, irritation, plays a large role in temperature control, and it's pretty darn important. So when you look at the skin has three main layers. There's the hypodermis, which is mostly fatty tissue. We're not particularly concerned with that because it's pretty deep down there, and skincare for the hypodermis would be very painful. Then there's the dermis and the epidermis. And so the epidermis is the layer of the skin that we're most concerned with because that is the top layer. The epidermis itself is really not very thick. It's roughly as thick as a sheet of paper, but it does vary. So, the skin on your eyelids is going to be a lot thinner than, say, the skin on the bottom of your feet. So yeah, it's pretty thin. Something to kind of note, our vascular system stops at the dermis. So that's that layer below the epidermis. So if you've cut yourself deeply enough to be bleeding, you have cut all the way through the epidermis and hit dermis. So that's kind of, I think I've definitely had some very shallow cuts. I'm like, really? You're bleeding? Seriously? Like this is nothing. And that's just how thin our epidermis is. And we will kind of be looping back to that discussion about the vascular system stopping at the dermis as well. And so yeah, the epidermis is the bit we're most concerned with. So the stratum basal is the very base layer of the epidermis, and it does butt up against the dermis there, so there does get to be a blood supply there, and that's where our fresh, new, gorgeous skin cells come out, or keratinocytes, and they're all juicy and plump. And then as about 4 weeks go by, they rise up through the epidermis to the top of the epidermis, the stratum corneum, or the SC, sometimes it's abbreviated to. And as they do that, they flatten out and they fill with keratin. So a lot of that sort of cellular structure you would have learned about in high school biology sort of just disappears as they rise up, and they just flatten out and become kind of flat scales or bricks of keratinocytes or skin cells. And at the very top layer there, the keratinocytes are held together as ceramides and kind of what's often referred to as a brick and mortar structure. So the keratinocytes, the skin cells, those are the bricks, and the ceramides, that's the mortar. And if you are a bit of a skincare aficionado, fan, whatever, I'm sure you have heard about ceramides as an active ingredient that is awesome in skin things. And that's part of the reason why, it's supplementing something that is an essential part of our skincare essential part of the structure of our skin. So stratum corneum, very top of the skin, that is the part that we put our skincare things on. If you are applying your skincare products much lower than the stratum corneum, you probably need a Band-Aid. I've got notes just off to the side here, so I'm trying to make sure I'm touching on all the most important things here. So on the very top of our skin is something that we call the acid mantle or the moisture barrier. And this is a really kick butt part of our body. It works really, really hard to protect us. And so a really big part of having happy skin is having a happy functioning moisture barrier or acid mantle. If you want to read more about the acid mantle, the best post I've ever written or ever read on it, I did not write it, is from a blog called Simple Skincare Science, and written by a fellow who goes by the initials FC. And so he's got this massive, super fascinating article on the acid mantle, and then sort of how the pH of your cleansers impacts your acid mantle. So please give it a read. It's really, really interesting. So yeah, as you might have guessed from the name, the acid mantle is lightly acidic. Generally, pH is about 4.5 to 5.5, and it varies with a lot of different factors. Men tend to have more acidic skin than women. People with darker skin tend to have more acidic skin than people with lighter skin. Older people, senior citizens, their skin starts to become more basic as you age, and we're actually born without an acid mantle. So that's a big part of the reason why newborn babies have such delicate skin. It takes a few months for that acid mantle to form. So if you check the skin pH of a newborn baby, it's going to be much closer to neutral, to 7, and then it will decrease as they age a bit. So that's all kind of quite cool. But yeah, keeping that acid mantle intact is a really big part of keeping our skin happy and reducing things like transepidermal water loss, or TEWL, which is an acronym you might have seen kind of kicking around. And that is a thing that, when we're talking about keeping our skin healthy, we definitely want to be reducing transepidermal water loss and keeping our moisture barrier happy. So one of the biggest ways that we can keep our moisture barrier happy is just by not making it angry, if that kind of makes sense. So repeatedly exposing your acid mantle or your skin to things that have drastically different pH values than the skin is quite hard on it. So we're looking at things that are sort of lower than 3, that's really quite acidic, and higher than 8 or 9 can be pretty hard on the skin. And it will self-correct over time, but I mean, if you scratch yourself or you get a bruise, that's going to heal over time as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that you want to be going out scratching yourself or bruising yourself. It's not it's unpleasant, I suppose. But yeah, so I've got a few notes here on sort of studies have found all kinds of bad things happen when the pH of your skin is raised. And this can happen with repeated exposure to high pH products. So they found that studies have found that people suffering from eczema, itchy skin, dry skin, the genetic skin disease ichthyosis vulgaris, which yes, I do have written out phonetically because that's the spelling of that is not indicative to saying it out loud properly. Athlete's foot, irritant contact dermatitis, they all have higher skin pH in the affected areas. So these conditions don't have a common cause. Some of these are environmental, some are fungal, some are genetic, but they all have this higher skin pH in common. Higher skin pH is associated with an increase in transepidermal water loss. Acne-causing bacteria thrive in a higher pH environment rather than a lower pH environment. And enzymes responsible for barrier repair start to lose functionality, finding that they functioned at 10 times lower levels at pH 7.4 than pH 5.5. So that's, not only is it damaging your barrier, but it's also damaging your body's ability to repair the barrier. And ceramide production drops, skin irritation increases, and bad bacteria can easily thrive, partially because our naturally occurring antimicrobial compounds lose a lot of efficacy as the skin pH goes up, but also it alters our microbiome, our skin's microbiome. So that's, keep your acid mantle intact, people. So one of the best things that we can do before we even start to talk about hand creams and hand care is making sure that whatever you're washing your hands with is mildly acidic. If you do really well with washing your hands with soap, like that's great, because everybody's skin is different, and I'm certainly not going to tell you that you can't use soap because I love soap. But if you do find that you have really dry skin, if you're finding that the increased frequency with which you are washing your hands is really making your hands dry, I really recommend trying a switch to a mildly acidic hand wash. So something like I made in the very first live stream that we did, I guess 4 full weeks ago now, will work, or the formulation I recently shared titled Hand Wash for lots and lots of hand washing. That's also a nice mild one. And so that just gives you a good place to start. It helps you reduce the irritation load on your skin, helps you reduce the damage that you might do, so that you're just kind of starting from a better place. So this is kind of regardless of moisturizer. If your hands are really unhappy with you, it's a good idea to try and just reduce the amount of irritation that you might be subjecting them to in the washing phase. So that's kind of thing number one I wanted to talk about. And so yes, Henrietta is asking, like, even with moisturizing soap, if it is soap and it has a high pH, yes, that high pH is kind of that key irritating potential. And I generally find that I've never once used a soap and been like, wow, that's super, super moisturizing in the same way, like the same standards that I would hold an actually moisturizing product to. They can be more gentle, they can be less drying, but I don't know anybody who's ever like, oh, I need hand lotion, but there's only hand wash here, so I'll just wash my hands instead. If you need hand cream, you need hand cream. So yeah, all right. Here's my list on ways to keep happy hands and happy skin. So yeah, thing one is keeping the moisture barrier intact. So we talked about using mildly acidic products and especially cleansers. And generally speaking, just be kind and gentle to your hands. So exposing your hands, say repeatedly, to extremely hot temperatures is quite hard on them. So again, if your hands are really unhappy with you, maybe try turning down the hot water a bit, so you're more in the lukewarm rather than the very, very hot kind of territory. And then we can also look at ingredients that help bolster the moisture barrier and reduce transepidermal water loss. So I'm not going to go crazy in depth into all these ingredients, because I do have a nice sort of collection of them here that I'm going to show off. So if you want to learn more about them, please make sure you are looking them up in the Humblebee and Me Encyclopedia. That is linked in the description box below, but there's a lot more information about all these ingredients there and kind of what they do, and it's a good resource. I'm quite proud of it. So one of the ones I wanted to start with here, and a lot of these are really not very sexy looking ingredients, not gonna lie, they're mostly white powders. So this is niacinamide, nice white powder. Niacinamide is also known as vitamin B3. This is a really wonderful ingredient for reducing transepidermal water loss and boosting barrier function, even at relatively low percents, 5% and less. You do generally want the pH of your products to be around 6 with this, but it's pretty freaking awesome, and my skin really, really likes it. So if you are formulating a cream, or if you're looking to buy a cream, looking for niacinamide is a good ingredient to look for. And so here's a couple things for you to check out. So if you are not a formulator and you don't want to be making these things, this product from La Roche-Posay contains 4% niacinamide and is a really lovely hand cream. If you want to make something similar, I did a pretty darn close, in my opinion, dupe of it. It's my moisturizing repair cream. You can find that linked in the description box below. It also contains 4% niacinamide and is really, really lovely for the skin. So that's one active I really love. You tend to find niacinamide a lot more in facial care, like skincare products, but it is wonderful all over the body, and it's not very expensive. So this 57-gram bag of it, which is like 2 ounces roughly, was $7.75 Canadian, which is probably like $5 US right now because our dollar's pretty bad, pretty weak. And this will take you a long way. So it's certainly not a very expensive additive, so highly worth considering. Another one to consider is N-Acetyl Glucosamine, another white powder. This also pairs really nicely with niacinamide to help brighten the skin, to reduce hyperpigmentation. So you'll see these two ingredients paired in the sort of cheery yellow, I'm trying to remember what I called it, sort of like an ultra brightening serum or something to that effect, gel serum that I shared, I think, just a couple days ago on Humble Bee and Me here on YouTube and on the blog. So I paired those two because studies have shown that they do a really great job of brightening the skin, but N-acetyl glucosamine is also really great for maintaining the barrier and for boosting barrier performance. So also fantastic. This is a bit more expensive than niacinamide. This 28-gram bag is $11.25, so it's like half the amount for 50% more cost. So yeah, it is more expensive, but also lovely. Ceramides. Okay, I don't have a bottle of ceramides here, but just sort of imagine a viscous whitish liquid for the Ceramide Complex. And so again, this is a thing you can look up in the Humble Bee and Me encyclopedia. And the Ceramide Complex is a product. It's a blend of a couple different ceramides and a ceramide precursor that encourages the production of more ceramides in the skin. All good things. Fabulous skincare active. Definitely one of the more expensive ones that we work with. So if you're not sure about ceramides, between the high cost, usually about $30 an ounce, and the reasonably short shelf life of about 6 months in the fridge, if you're not sure about it, I'd really recommend just buying a product that contains some ceramides and seeing if it works for your skin. And if it does, great, then you can consider making that investment. But if it's not getting you real excited, then you could probably save yourself that money. And a really great brand that uses lots of ceramides is CeraVe. So I have one of their products here. So this is kind of their logo. They have a cream that comes in a white tub, and it's very, very sort of classically popular in skincare circles. It's unfragranced, and it's got lots of great stuff in it, including ceramides. That's actually what the Cera apparently in their name stands for. Ceramides, because they put ceramides in all the things. So yeah, if you're looking to try a product with ceramides, that's a great inexpensive one to try. A big tub of the stuff is like $20. You can even get it at Costco. It's a good product to give a shot. And so that's another great ingredient for helping bolster the moisture barrier and help improve the function and the structure of the skin. Kit was asking if this video is going to be available after the live is done. Yes, it will. I will leave it up on YouTube, and I will also build out the description box kind of based on some of the things that we ended up talking about today. I put a few preemptive things down there, but I'll beef it up when we are done as well. And then another ingredient that I absolutely love for improving barrier repair and just making skin happy is urea. So this is from Aromazone, so it's Urea in French on the label here, but this is just a sort of a white crystalline powder. And this is another product where before you start formulating with it, you might want to just purchase a product that uses some. You can buy like 20% urea creams at Shoppers Drug Mart for very, very inexpensive, less than $10, I think. And in my experience, they are the only, like urea, high concentrations of urea is the only thing that really softens skin on like my feet and my elbows, that really like really tough skin. So it's amazing. And FC over at Simple Skincare Science also has an amazing, super thorough article on urea. So if you want to learn more about it, I really recommend giving that a read. He links to tons of studies, and it's just, it'll have you sort of like running out and buying urea pretty much immediately. So that was kind of point one, was keeping the moisture barrier intact and bolstering its performance as much as possible. Kind of circling back around to that, don't irritate whenever possible. One of the easiest ways to avoid irritating skin, especially if your skin is already unhappy, if it's already like cracked, is to avoid anything scented. So this is fragrances, but also essential oils. I find that hydrosols tend to be a little bit easier on skin that's sort of sensitive to scents. But yeah, this just essential oils and fragrances are really complex, potent blends of a wide variety of chemicals, naturally occurring and synthetic. And if your skin is upset, that's one of the easiest ingredients to drop to reduce the irritation potential of a product. So thing to keep in mind. Question from Sunday here. Do you have videos helping to figure out how to implement a formula for making your own lotions? I think I'm going to have actually an announcement about something like that soon-ish, so stay tuned. All right. We can talk about soothing. So if your skin is irritated, we want to sort of dial back that irritation, make a product that helps sort of soothe that irritation. We have some wonderful ingredients we can choose from there. So one of my favorites is Panthenol, another white powder. So this is also known as vitamin B5. It helps improve barrier function. It helps reduce transepidermal water loss. It's moisturizing. It helps improve skin elasticity. It's a fabulous ingredient, and it's quite cooperative, easy to work with, readily water soluble, not hugely fussed about pH, which is also nice. I mean, obviously your skin is fussed about pH, so keep that in mind, but you don't need to be really worried about the Panthenol not functioning well if the pH is like half off of some value. So yes, awesome. Henrietta, can you list these ingredients below so it's easier to look them up? Yes, that's a great idea. I've got the list sort of here on my notes already, so it'll be pretty easy to kind of transcribe that over and give you a list of stuff to look up. Allantoin is another awesome white powder that's really great for soothing irritated skin. A challenge with Allantoin is that it is fairly minimally water soluble. It's only about just over, I think, 0.5% water soluble. And so a challenge with it can be that it feels grainy or kind of shardy in products, especially if one uses more than that 0.5%. And not just within the formulation, but in relation to how much water is in the formulation. So, if a formulation only has 50% water, if you also include 0.5% of Allantoin, you're effectively doubling the amount of Allantoin that water could dissolve. So that's why in a lot of my more recent formulations, you will see that the Allantoin usage rate is quite low. Fortunately, it's also effective at quite a low usage rate, so that's great. Ella, my Panthenol is liquid. Do you think it matters? The only big difference that I've read about there is that liquid Panthenol is supposed to go in your cool down phase, where powdered Panthenol can go in the heated phase. But beyond that, it doesn't seem to matter. Make sure you are checking with your supplier to see if there's any notes on a dilution level, because usually the inky for liquid Panthenol is Panthenol and water. So if it's like a 50% solution, you'd want to use twice as much, because there's half as much in there as there is in the powder. Alicia wants to know if you can use B5 and B3 together. Absolutely you can. Go for it. It's fantastic. Freaking fantastic products. Yep. You can definitely do that. I'm sure I have done it before. It's great. And then another one awesome for soothing the skin is colloidal oatmeal. So if you want to learn more about colloidal oatmeal, it's kind of a funny product, right? Like it's not just oat flour, but the inky is oat flour. But like, it's not just oat flour. If you just go to the grocery store and buy just oat flour, it's not the same thing. So Lisa Lees has a really good article on sort of her sleuthing about colloidal oatmeal, because it's turned out to be a little bit more of a quagmire than it sounds like she thought it would be when she started writing the article, and it was quite enlightening. So I've linked to that in the encyclopedia article on colloidal oatmeal on humblebeeandme.com, so I recommend giving that a read. But colloidal oatmeal is a wonderful skin protectant. I believe it's actually an FDA approved sort of skin soothing ingredient. So freaking great at 1% ish, works beautifully, beautifully, beautifully. I love it. Let's see here. We've got a couple questions just about some ingredients that we've already talked about. And so, like, what is B3 good for? Please look it up in the Humble Bee and Me encyclopedia, because we've kind of already covered that, and I don't want to loop back too much. Are these ingredients fast absorbing? Most of these ingredients, the absorption speed is not really, it's not like, they're not going to impact the absorption speed of your formulation. Absorption speed is usually a lot more to do with, or how we sort of perceive the absorption speed is a lot more to do with the oil phase. So all of these ingredients that we discussed so far are water soluble. And so you're not really going to notice any like greasiness or oiliness or anything from them, because they don't have any fat in them. Okay, hydration. So this is kind of where I was talking about how we were going to loop back to how the vascular system stops at the dermis. So the vascular system is, it's the train lines of the body. It's how the body delivers goodies all around the body. If there are no blood vessels somewhere, the body cannot deliver things to that part of the body. So when we look at like the very top layer of the skin, we know that, so we're not only looking at the very double meaning here, the top layer of the epidermis, or the top layer of the skin being the epidermis, and then the top layer of the epidermis being the stratum corneum, knowing that the vascular system stops a full layer below, there kind of reaches a point where no matter how much water you drink, you are not going to be making your skin any more hydrated, because your body can't deliver it there. The train lines don't go that far. So you definitely want to make sure, you're well hydrated for many health reasons, but drinking tons and tons of water is only going to help your skin kind of up to a point. So that's kind of a good thing to know. And your skin really does need water. I kind of often hear this idea that like water is just like cheap oil, and that putting water in a product is like a cheap cop-out. You could use butter instead and it would be like a superior product, but they are really, really, really different products. Like, I have never once said to myself, I want to make like the best cup of tea I've ever had, so I'm going to use olive oil or like melted butter instead of water, right? Like they're really drastically different ingredients, and your skin really does need water to help it be its best self. And applying it topically is often very, very, very useful. The drier the environment you live in, the more you'll probably notice that. I know that my skin is a lot happier in humid environments, and I don't live in a humid environment, so every time I travel somewhere humid, it's just like, oh my gosh, my skin is so happy. Oh yeah. There. Water. You need it. Your body cannot deliver it to the top layer of the skin. So there's a couple different things that we can do. Your skin can absorb quite a lot of water, but it doesn't tend to hold on to it very well. So if you think about sitting in your bathtub for a real long time, and your hands get all wrinkly and your skin like will really swell up, it will absorb a huge amount of water, but it doesn't stay that way for very long, right? And as you've probably noticed, you can go and sit in a nice hot bath and like your skin it'll soak up a lot of water, but after you've been out of the tub for a while, if you don't put anything on to kind of keep that water in, so that could be a body oil, a lotion, a body butter, your skin will then feel even drier. So yeah, your skin's pretty good at absorbing water. It's just not very good at holding onto it. So we can do a few things to help it hold onto it better. Let's see here. I'm just going to pull out to a couple questions here. Does dimethicone with the silicones help protect the skin, or is it just to improve the skin feel of formulation? Dimethicone is a skin protectant, and it's also a good emollient. So, and then it does also improve the feel of formulation. So I do tend to like a little bit of silicone products in a lot of hand creams. I've never seen you use a lotion formulation using sodium PCA. And I do actually have some sodium PCA, and I have played with it, but I've never seen it for sale in Canada, and I do often kind of back away from trying to use too many ingredients that aren't available for sale in Canada for my fellow Canadians, especially when there are sort of similarly performing ingredients that you can. So I tend to use sodium lactate instead of sodium PCA. I can't find colloidal oatmeal in my country. Is it okay to use the normal oatmeal that I eat to make my product? So that's not going to be the same thing. And so I would really refer you to that article that Lisa Lees wrote. It's linked in the Humble Bee and Me Encyclopedia post on colloidal oatmeal. So give that a read. Yeah. Does the humidity of the environment affect the absorption time? I think the humidity of the environment, and this is more of a hypothesis than hard fact, will probably impact your perception of the absorption time. So if you live somewhere really humid and really warm, I generally find that you usually want a faster absorbing product because you already have more water in your skin because of the humidity in the environment. It's an interesting question. I'm not sure I have a great answer for that. Is there a way to purchase your book in a PDF form? The only available way I see is via Amazon. Amazon does sell my book as an ebook. I do not sell it in a PDF form, though. I think if you buy it from Amazon or any place that sells it as an ebook, it's going to be in an ebook format rather than a PDF format. All right, so water. Your skin needs it. So how do we help it stick around for longer? So humectants. Humectants are the bomb. My favorite humectant, I think I just really keep coming back to this, is vegetable glycerin. It's so good. It's inexpensive. It's a very strong, effective humectant. It can be sticky. I do find that different people have different perceptions of what they consider to be sticky. I've had some of the formulations I've shared recently that have high concentrations of glycerin in them. I hear from some people that it's the best lotion they've ever tried. It makes their skin so happy. It's absolutely wonderful. And then I hear from some other people that it's unbearably sticky and they can't stand it. So there's definitely a level of personal preference in here. You can reduce the tackiness of anything, any formulation really, with the inclusion of a small amount of dimethicone or other silicones. So that is a big part of the reason why you will find a small amount of dimethicone in my formulations that have high concentrations of glycerin. So I did want to talk about a couple different products and formulations that I've shared that have just buttloads of glycerin in them because my skin really, really likes it. It's an inexpensive humectant. It's really effective. And if your skin likes it, like, booyah. It's like finding a store brand equivalent of an expensive product that you liked. You kind of get to like, yes, results, but for less money. So revisiting these two products, both of these contain 30% vegetable glycerin, which is a lot of vegetable glycerin, and it's great. So again, this is the Cicaplast Mains from La Roche-Posay, and this is my moisturizing repair cream. It's linked in the description box below already. Other ones that contain quite a lot of glycerin, if you want to buy a product, this one from Neutrogena, their Norwegian formula hand cream. The ingredients aren't actually on this tube. They were on the box that it came in. I think glycerin is like the second ingredient in this cream. This stuff is amazing. You just need a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of it, and it's freaking fantastic. I'd say these two products are reasonably comparable, though this one does contain niacinamide, but this one is much cheaper. This is a 50 milliliter tube, and I think this was like $16, whereas this is a 56 grams, so it is a little bit bigger, and I think this was like less than $5. I just got this at Target when I was in the States one. So this is great. Another great thing about both of these is they are fragrance free, completely unscented. So again, good for skin that is maybe not that happy with you. And then two more that contain a pretty good amount of glycerin. Little Ease Lemon Shea hand lotion. This one does have some fragrance in it. and a little bit of color because the story is basically I made it for the young daughter of some friends, and she had very, very dry hands that were very painful, and so I designed this lotion for her, and it also contains colloidal oatmeal and oh man, I'm blanking on all the great things in here, but it does have some great things in here. Shea butters, you could probably guess around the name. And I was told that when she was given the lotion and tried it for the first time, she exclaimed that it was her best friend after her little brother, and she absolutely loves it. And her hands haven't been nearly as painful as they had been in the past. So that's great. And then this is the new Intense Hand Rescue Lotion that I shared. And so this contains a lot of the actives that we've talked about today. There's lots of glycerin in here. There's some dimethicone. There is ceramides. There's colloidal oatmeal. There's some great emollients in here. So this is also a really great one to make. And then if you're looking for other, let's see here, I do have a few other products here. We'll talk about later. So sorry about products, but yeah, they're great, fantastic humectant. And humectants help. I guess we should talk about. What are humectants? What do? They help hold on to moisture. They help keep things from drying out. And so, I mean, one of the reasons that you end up with humectants in skincare products is so if the lid gets left off, they don't just like completely dry out overnight, but they help hold moisture to your skin longer so it doesn't evaporate off as quickly because our skin's really not that absorbent. If it was, right, you would take a bath and then you'd immediately like have to go pee because you would have just like soaked up so much water in that you're like, oh my gosh, my bladder's full. Like our skin's really not that absorbent. So in a lot of cases, we're just trying to sort of hold things to our skin for as long as possible so they can do as much good as possible before they kind of end up like evaporating off or getting wiped off, abraded off as we just kind of go about our day. So humectants help hold onto water for as long as possible. Other humectants that we have here, I've got some Propanediol 1,3. You can also, very, very, very similar to propylene glycol. It's just that Propanediol 1,3 has a biological corn source, whereas propylene glycol is a petrochemical source, but the molecule itself is very similar. Both fantastic humectants. And this one's a little less sticky than glycerin, so you might end up preferring it from that angle if you don't like sticky things. And then there's also hyaluronic acid. This is on the other end of cost efficacy. Hyaluronic acid's pretty expensive, though we do tend to only use it at about 0.2%. We usually make a solution of about 1% hyaluronic acid, creates a viscous liquid that we can then include in our formulations at 20%, and that gives us a 0.2% hyaluronic acid content. And this is a very decadent, gorgeous humectant. Hyaluronic acid does occur naturally in our bodies, which is very cool. It's very trendy. I'm sure you've heard of hyaluronic acid if you've done much reading about skincare products. So I shared a Pemberley hand lotion that uses a hyaluronic acid stock in it, and that's a really lovely, lovely hand lotion as well. But yeah, hyaluronic acid does tend to cost about $5 a gram, so it is reasonably pricey, unless you happen to live in New Zealand, which is where this is from. This was a gift from Pure Nature, but they sell it for like $1 a gram down there, $1, like $1 New Zealand dollar a gram. So if you happen to live in New Zealand, score, scoop it up. How to prevent pilling in case of hyaluronic acid. I have never had problems with pilling with hyaluronic acid. Nancy, what is your source for hyaluronic acid? This is from Pure Nature in New Zealand. It's a 25-gram bag, so I was last in New Zealand at the end of 2017, and I'm still working on this bag that I brought home from them then, because I tend to only measure out a gram at a time, make it into the 1% solution, and then kind of go from there. So it tends to last quite a long time. But yeah, that's where this is from. You can also buy it in Canada. Windy Point has it, and in the States you can get it at Lotion Crafter. So yeah, all right. Other good humectants, hydrolyzed proteins they're really lovely and moisturizing. And so this one is hydrolyzed oat protein, but you can also get, I love hydrolyzed silk, hydrolyzed rice protein, hydrolyzed quinoa protein, hydrolyzed baobab protein, hydrolyzed wheat. There's a lot of hydrolyzed proteins, and I do find that they do make a big difference in how moisturizing a lotion is, how long it kind of sticks around on your skin. Another way to reduce the loss of water from the skin is with emollients and occlusives. So, one of the simplest ways to kind of imagine this is, after you take a bath, you get out of the bath, you've applied plenty of water to your skin by sitting in the tub. You can help kind of trap that water in by applying some fat. So straight shea butter would do the trick, nice blended body oil, and that will help, sort of slow the loss of the water from the skin. We tend to kind of combine that in products when we do emulsions. So an emulsified lotion is going to be mostly water, usually. Most people kind of tend to prefer it that way. It gives a lighter skin feel, absorbs into the skin faster, doesn't sort of leave greasiness behind, really dilutes the oil in a lot of water. But yeah, if you have a bit of lotion, there's going to be some oil in there, and that's going to help slow the loss of the water along with any humectants that are in there. So here's a couple of my favorite emollients for ultra dry skin. Shea butter is a big one. I do tend to find that these days I like refined shea butter that's had the scent removed. Shea butter on its own, if you've never worked with unrefined shea butter, has kind of pretty distinct sort of dusty, slightly smoky smell to it, and it tends to carry through even at relatively low concentrations, and a lot of people don't really like it. I hear a lot of people sort of asking about how to kind of cover up that scent, and the easiest way to cover up that scent is to not have to deal with it at all and just buy the refined stuff, which is just completely white and really easy to work with. So yeah, shea butter I've found has been an absolutely amazing emollient for really dry skin. It does tend to be quite greasy though, so I tend to like it in emulsions where the water content of the emulsion can counter the really greasy and slightly kind of sticky feel of it. Lanolin is also a wonderful emollient for really dry skin. I know it's quite commonly used by breastfeeding mothers for chapped and irritated nipples, and sort of a twist on that, you can buy just pure powdered cholesterol. And so lanolin does contain cholesterol, so you can these kind of presenting these at the same time for that reason. But it's a really good skin similar emollients. And then when we're looking at talking about creating things that absorb into the skin quickly and don't leave the skin feeling oily, sort of inexpensive emollients, so this is fractionated coconut oil, also tend to work really, really well in combination with other things, other ingredients. You can create gorgeous, gorgeous creams using really, really simple, non-exotic oils like fractionated coconut oil. I also wanted to talk a bit about evening primrose oil. So it's really rich in gamma-linolenic acid, which has been found to be beneficial for irritated, unhappy skin. There are a few oils that are really rich in gamma-linolenic acid. So there's evening primrose oil, borage seed oil, and blackcurrant seed oil. It does have kind of a fishy smell to it. It's a sort of thing where you often want to dilute it with other things. So in a lotion, you're probably not going to notice that smell coming through. It's also, they're quite oily. So again, really nice in a lotion, or if you were going to make like an oil serum with it, you might want to dilute it with something a little lighter and faster absorbing so that you don't have that really heavy skin feel if that's not a thing that you enjoy. And then kind of lastly, we want to talk about occlusion. So occlusion is, trying to stop as much water loss as possible. Emollients help, but occlusions are like next level. Petrolatum, aka Vaseline, is a great and completely unrivaled occlusive. It is not natural at all, but it is brilliant. It performs so well. I find that if my skin is really, really unhappy, one of the best things that I can do is put on like a fairly thick smear of Vaseline or something that contains quite a lot of petrolatum before I go to bed, and I wake up in the morning with much happier skin. So I often do that with my face, especially if I have sunburn or something, but it can be great on hands as well. You probably would want to put on a pair of gloves before you went to bed because you're going to be leaving like greasy fingerprints all over everything. So this is one of my favorite occlusive products. It's CeraVe's Healing Ointment. It yeah, it's a great skin protectant. It contains 46.5% petrolatum, and also contains mineral oil, paraffin, azocarite, dimethicone, hyaluronic acid, sodium hydroxide, which will be there for pH adjusting, selection of ceramides, vitamin E, ceramide precursor, cholesterol, some panthenol. Like there's some really great stuff in here, and it's a really fantastic emollient and occlusive. So yeah, if you kind of want to put a lid on all the moisture that you've put on your skin, something like this is great. Straight Vaseline works, Aquaphor works, good stuff. Usually more of an overnight thing though. Something kind of a concern that I've seen expressed about occlusion is that it can suffocate the skin. It's not really a concern with things like this, in large part because the skin is on a very fine, like very close up layer. It's not a uniform surface, and so it's very difficult to achieve complete occlusion. Not to mention that the product wears off reasonably quickly, and you're just kind of like sitting there. Obviously, if you completely wrapped yourself in a cling film, that would be problematic. Please do not mummify yourself in Saran wrap, but putting on Vaseline is not going to suffocate. It's not going to suffocate your skin, so that's good. I'm trying to think about some of the other things I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I've had a few people look at some of my formulations that contain a lot of glycerin and say, well, isn't that going to like make your skin drier? No, thankfully it is not. What a large part of what humectants can also do on the skin is help pull water up from the deeper layers of the skin. So we kind of talked about like the last stop being the dermis and the border between the dermis and the epidermis. That's the last stop for the vascular system. And so we are getting water delivered there. Humectants can help pull it up into the surface of the skin to help it perform better. And I've had some people say, well, it's stealing water from the rest of your body. I would say that if you are so dehydrated that having glycerin or another humectant pull water up from the deeper layers of your skin is a safety concern, you need to drink more water. It's the body's constantly replenishing those stores as long as you're constantly intaking adequate amounts of water. So that's not a concern there. And I'm also going to pull over a couple other products to look at if you don't want to make things. A couple other sort of like drugstore and other commercially available hand creams that I've found perform very, very well. I've been really impressed with the ingredient lists on Gold Bond. There's some really nice stuff in here. Vitamin E. There's retinol palmitate, there's MAP, magnesium scorbophosphate, which is like a vitamin C kind of derivative. There is some urea in here, I believe, aloe vera, tons of great emollients as well. So I've been really impressed with the ingredient lists on Gold Bond. So it's a pretty inexpensive, readily available, good hand lotion if you're looking for one. And I've also been impressed with this product from Deciem. This is their hand chemistry hand lotion. My only complaint about it is that it does contain fragrance, and so it smells kind of funny to me. It's like a tangy, fruity thing. Like it's good enough that I will use it in like despite of the fragrance. I don't really like the fragrance, so maybe that's just me. But yeah, I wish they made this in an unscented version. Okay, I'm going to kind of look at some of the questions we have on the side here. Do you use some exotic butters, and what is the best? I've used quite a lot of exotic butters. I tend to like mango butter the best because it sinks into the skin really, really quickly. And I like shea butter a lot for really irritated skin. I have played with a lot of different exotic butters, and very few have really managed to sort of capture my heart. I love cocoa butter. I don't really think cocoa butter is all that exotic, though. In the grand scheme of being able to buy things like Akuba butter. Yeah, I've used a lot of them, but I tend to kind of come back to the classics. I tried making a lightweight lotion using fractionated coconut oil. It somehow didn't emulsify for me. That probably has very little to do with the fractionated coconut oil and a lot more to do with the emulsifier. Like, was there an emulsifier? Was it the proper amount? Can you talk about creating a lotion for dry facial skin? I've been attempting to make formulations for face lotion, and my face feels drier than before. So that's a pretty hard sort of question or topic to address without really knowing what you've been doing which is far outside the scope of a live stream here. I would really recommend checking out some of the face lotions that I have shared on Humblebee and Me in the last year. Look up the ingredients in the Humblebee and Me encyclopedia, and there's some. You should be able to glean some good information there. Maybe try making some of those and seeing if they work for you. And if you don't, then you can get in touch with me and say, hey, I made this and it really didn't work for me. And I'm much more able to help you troubleshoot when you're making something from one of my formulations. I thought urea was a preservative. I think you're probably thinking of one of the active ingredients in liquid Germall Plus, which does have urea in the name. It's also in gold bond here, so I'm just reading the diazolindinyl urea. So that's different than urea, and that is a preservative. Yes. Cheyenne Rose, would you ever consider creating a formulation class that's more advanced than your beginner formulation email series? I've considered it. Honestly, running a class and running a proper course is it's a lot of work. It really is a ton of work. I've seen, there's definitely interest in it, but oh my gosh, it's a ton of work, and I'm already pretty busy helping people make the things I already share on my website. So it's not that I like the idea. I just don't know if I have the time, and I would want to make sure I do it properly. In the meantime, or alternatively, I really enjoyed the course that I did with Formula Botanica. So they that's their thing. That's what they do. They teach courses. They have staff. They have trained formulating staff that can help you with things. So that's a good option. Somebody saying what I assume is supposed to be liquid Germall Plus makes my skin burn. What other preservatives could I try? I've been pretty happy with Optifin Plus and other things, but if you go to humblebeeandme.com/preservatives, I have a big table there of a bunch of different ones that could kind of give you a good place to start. George wants to know, is your lipstick one of yours? It's not actually. This is an Estee Lauder one I got as a gift with purchase. I think it's called like Dusty Rose or something like that, and I quite like it. What is your intake about oils that is high in PUFA, polyunsaturated fatty acids? I don't really do dietary stuff, so if that's what you mean by intake, it's not really my thing. I am not a nutritionist or a dietitian or anything of that variety. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to touch on. Oh, ingredients to avoid. One of the biggest ones is alcohol, and that we're talking about like volatile alcohol, so things like ethanol and isopropyl alcohol, denatured alcohol. You can find those in some hand creams because they really do make the product dry down really, really quickly. They will sting horribly on compromised skin. It's incredibly, incredibly uncomfortable. So highly recommended to avoid anything that contains denatured alcohol. You want to make sure that you're looking at what type of alcohol it is, though, because there are good alcohols in skin. So things like cetyl alcohol and cetyl alcohol, they do have alcohol in the name. They are not volatile alcohols. They're actually gorgeous emollients. I saw Christopher a little further up the chat talking about how much his skin loves cetyl alcohol. I really love cetyl alcohol and cetyl alcohol in skincare products. They are not volatile alcohols. So don't confuse them, but yeah, avoid volatile alcohols because they're stingy, burny, boo earns. But yeah, cetyl alcohol, cetyl alcohol, freaking awesome. What's your opinion on PEGs? You just recently started using them. I have not just recently started using them. Actually, I've been using them since very, very early days. The polysorbates are also PEGs. I generally think they're fine. I understand that quite a few people like to avoid them, but I have not been convinced of any sort of safety concerns there. You can read more about them on the on cosmeticsinfo.org to sort of learn more about them. But yeah, I'm not concerned about them, and I do enjoy them. I mean, a lot of like other places you find PEGs is things like most emulsifying waxes that aren't natural will contain PEGs. All of them 300 is a PEG product. Water-soluble shea butter is a PEG product. Pola wax, we're pretty sure is the inky there is a little uncertain because it's a proprietary product, but like emulsifying wax NF contains PEG. So yeah, I I'm fine with PEGs, but I do also experiment with other alternatives. So something like All of Them 1000 would be a PEG-free emulsifying wax, and Rita Emulse SCG would be another one. Would you use both cetyl alcohol and BTMS in a formulation? Absolutely. I've done it quite a few times. Oils and PUFA, is it safe? I don't know of any reason why you wouldn't put them on your skin. Let's see here. What's your suggestion for butters and oils to use for extremely dry and cracked heels? I would actually circle back around to urea. If you really want to like deeply moisturize and soften extremely dry and cracked heels, the butter and the oil is not gonna be your magic ingredient there. Urea it's amazing. So one of the easiest ways to give it a try is to just buy a high concentration urea cream from the drugstore, like 20%, and try that on your feet. And I've been super impressed. You can put the butter or the cream on afterwards, or if you're if you want to like slather your feet in shea butter after you put on a urea cream and then put on some socks, I think that'll help. That'll slow the evaporation of the water in the cream. But yeah, I've never found anything that works as well on dry, cracked skin as urea does. How do you spell that ingredient? It is Urea. Cindy, I'm looking for hand and face creams that are natural ingredients such as no petroleum products. My favorite for hands is called Gardener's Dream Cream. I usually check my products on the EWG. I would really recommend that you stop checking your products on the EWG. I have written a FAQ on that, and so I recommend giving that a read. It's not a great database. One of the products, or one of the things that I kind of like to point out about them, is that if you look up, and maybe they've corrected this since, but if you looked up Petrolatum, they would give it a variety of different ratings depending on the brand, even though it's a USP product, so it's a United States Pharmacopoeia, like there's a pretty strict threshold, strict requirements that the product has to meet. I don't like them as an organization. They're quite fear-mongery, and they'll give things terrible ratings with almost no data. Like they'll be like, safety rating 7, bad, and they look at the data and it says data like extremely limited, and it's like, where did that number come from, right? Like, I don't know, not a big fan of them. So if you're looking for a better database, I recommend checking out cosmeticsinfo.org. Where do you get your urea cream? I literally just bought it at Shoppers Drug Mart. You can formulate with urea. Please look it up in the Humble Bee and Me Encyclopedia to learn a bit more about that. Looking for a formula for a lotion face primer. Face primers usually have quite a lot of silicones in them, and that's roughly the end of how much I know about cosmetic face primers. You could try looking for some sample formulations for them through manufacturers and suppliers. So if you check out my How to Research Your Ingredients Part 2, there's a lot of information in there about finding sample formulations. So I would dive into that. I know both Lotion Crafter and Making Cosmetics have a ton of readily available sample formulations on their websites using their products. If you're looking for hand and face creams that are all natural ingredients, I have a ton of formulations for things like that on my blog on humblebeeandme.com. So there's lots of them there, and there's also fairly easy substitutions that you can make. So most creams that would use something like Polo Wax, if you didn't want to use Polo Wax, you could use All of Them 1000 instead, and they would work. And that would, for a lot of products, make them pretty darn natural. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap this up here. It's already been an hour. It is amazing how quickly an hour passes. I do kind of want to remind you to make sure you are looking up these ingredients in the Humble Bee and Me Encyclopedia, and also check out the Humble Bee and Me FAQ. There's well over 100 posts in the Humble Bee and Me FAQ, and I have answered a lot of questions there. I'm constantly surprised at how frequently asked some very obscure things can be, and so they're answered in the Humble Bee and Me FAQ. And yeah, if you are looking at working with an ingredient, please look it up in the Humble Bee and Me Encyclopedia as well. And then also make sure you're checking out, I did 2 really long blog posts on how to research your ingredients. And I really do want to empower you to do your own research, to be able to do your own research. So you're not relying on me or on anybody else, but you can go out there and you can gather that information for yourself, right? Because all about empowering. Go off and do your thing and learn your things and make things that your body loves. So yeah, those 2 posts are big and long and super, super educational, and I'm very proud of them. So please give them a read. I think they're great. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope your poor hands can be as happy as possible with all this hand washing. But yeah, wash your hands, stay safe, stay sane, and don't forget to come back tomorrow because new formulations come out every Monday and every Thursday. But yeah, thank you so much, and I will see you guys probably next week.